Akaniambia mimi na msichana mwingine mpande gari muende. Yeye ndiye alituma pesa transport.
Mimi nilikuwa najua tu jina Nairobi, na Nairobi sijui, sijawahi kuja, ni hiyo first time yangu kukuja.
Human trafficking, as we learned from history lessons, can be dated back during the eras of colonialism and imperialism to use the slaves for war, agriculture, and industries until the end of the 19th century. The United Nations defines human trafficking as the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of persons by improper means, such as force, abduction, fraud, or coercion, for improper purpose, including forced labor or sexual exploitation. Examples of modern-day slavery include sex trafficking, child sex trafficking, forced labor, bonded labor or debt bondage, domestic servitude, forced child labor, and unlawful recruitment and use of child soldiers.
And especially now, so when humanity, populations in the world are on the move, we are seeing immigrations for all sorts of reasons, economic reasons, war and displaced people, young people looking for better life and greener pastures are on the move, and there are unscrupulous people who are taking advantage of them, and they really live in modern day slavery, their labor being exploited or subjected to horrible enslavement like sexual slavery and all that.
Human trafficking as a social global phenomenon involves the exploitation of human vulnerabilities such as household poverty, illiteracy, physical and mental disability to exercise power over the victim through forced labor, sexual exploitation, or organ harvesting. In Kenya, human trafficking occurs at local, national, and international levels. At the local levels, children, both male and female, are trafficked from the villages to the urban or peri-urban centers for labor and sexual exploitation in the agriculturally productive areas such as Naivasha, Kericho, Mumias, and Gilgil. Further, Kenyan children within the Kenyan coast are trafficked for sexual exploitation along the Indian Ocean beaches in Mombasa, Malindi, Kwale, and Lamu counties. Young women, mostly from economically disadvantaged families, are trafficked through local networks to the cities such as Eldoret, Kisumu, Nairobi, and Mombasa. These are mostly transferred to provide domestic labor among middle-class households. Trafficking rings further send young girls in-country for sexual exploitation in major towns such as Nairobi. In Western Kenya, married women are trafficked from the rural areas to the cities such as Nairobi, Kisumu, and Mombasa. They are also mostly recruited as house girls, but some end up working in bars and brothels in the urban centers. In Africa, cases of human trafficking have been reported by the media many times over the years, mainly castigating the matter. South African-based News 24 publication on 11th August 2021, for instance, reported a story titled "Top Advocate Allegedly Used Social Media to Find Teenage Boys, Then Paid Them for Lewd Videos." In East Africa, the East African reported on July 2020 that Burundi and South Sudan as being East Africa's weak link in human trafficking, according to a report by US State Department titled Trafficking in Persons Report, TIP report, in June 2020. On 30th July 2021, a day the world observed UN World Day Against Trafficking in Persons, Yvonne Oyeke of Capital News reported that sex trafficking in Kenya is on the increase, whilst Kenya having robust legal framework designed to protect victims of sexual trafficking. In 2018, the Anglican Development Services Kenya, abbreviated as ADS Kenya, which is the specialized development arm of the Anglican Church of Kenya, was awarded a grant from the University of Liverpool's Anti-Slavery Knowledge Network to conduct a research on human trafficking in Kenya.
Our aim of applying for this grant was first of all to be able to understand the phenomena of human trafficking in this country and to use the structures of the Anglican Church of Kenya to be able to reach out to community members through Anglican Church parishes.
There are quite a number of gaps that have been identified. One, appreciating that human trafficking is a very complicated and sophisticated network involved. So we are hoping that those gaps, such as identifying the different forms of human trafficking and coming up with the interventions, I think that will be an area that would want to see how do we come up with a solution with such kind of gaps.
At the age of 15, a daring Nakiru Rita from Uganda set out to look for a good job in Nairobi, Kenya, a city she thought was full of opportunities, and that was only the way she was going to help her poor mother to lead a better life.
Mimi nilikuwa najua Nairobi hakuna vumbi. Ni ile tu kolas peke yake, hakuna vumbi, hakuna hii mabati, nyumba za mabati. Nilikuwa najua tu ni kama Amerika labda.
We spoke to her from Majengo slums in Nairobi, where she stays with a community of her tribesmen. She narrated her ordeal in the hands of unscrupulous employers in Nairobi. Her first stop in Kenya, Busia town.
Vile nimekuja Busia, ndio nikapata wale watu tu, wale wasichana wenye wanakujanga Nairobi. Sasa kuna wasichana wengine sijui walikuwa wanatoka hapa Nairobi, wakakuja paka huko Busia. Nikawauliza mmetoka wapi? Wakaniambia wametoka wapi? Wametoka Nairobi. Mimi nikasema simu kifika kurudi, mnipelekeni hata mimi. Wakakataa. Wakasema watapeleka mtu yoyote, ati hao anaogopa wakipeleka mtu labda aende huko afanye kazi na aibe, ndio watashikwa. Nikasema sawa basi.
Nakiru was determined to end up in the land of opportunities and was not going to give up. She worked for her bus fare.
Na hiyo wakati sikuwa na pesa, nikaenda kwanza nikafanya huko Busia iko na soko watu wanafanyanga tu ile ya mahindi na ya maragwe, unafanya tu ukipata pesa, huyu mtu labda mwenyewe anakulipa. Sasa nikafanya sijui mwezi moja nikapata hiyo pesa. Nikaenda nikachange. Kuna mwanaume mwingine anachange huko pesa ya Kenya. Za Uganda zinakuwa za Kenya. Nikapeana hizo pesa. Akanichangia 1000 ngapi? 1000 ya Kenya. Sikuwa najua hata ni 1000. Mimi tu nilikuwa nashika tu hivyo.
Fast forward, Nakiru found herself in Nairobi, lost, not knowing whether to head east or west.
Huyu jamaa wa gari akanieleza, "Kwani wewe msichana unaenda wapi?" Nikasema mimi nimekuja Nairobi. Akaniambia unajua Nairobi. Sasa nikakumbuka ati ukisema hapa Nairobi ujui mtu anakupeleka kwake, labda anakupeleka vitu zingine. Mimi nikasema hapa najuanga na ngoja sister yangu mwingine. Hapa nikamdanganya tu hivyo. Sasa vile nimepiga tu macho hivi, nikaona wasichana wawili wanaongea lugha yetu. Sasa nikasema ama wasichana niwaulize wanipeleke pale sijui wa Karamojongo na kuanga wengi. Sijui ni huko hiyo grau kubwa yenye iko hapo. Sasa hapo nikafuata wao wasichana polepole. Wao wako mbele yangu, mimi niko nyuma yao. Nikafuata polepole, nikastukia nitumeangukia hao pale hao hiyo grau. Wako wengi, mimi nikaona tu kweli wako wengi. Ile kwa Sunday. Sijui nikamkunji.
That would be the beginning of Nakiru's story of hope to despair in Nairobi. She worked as a house help from one house to the other, earning as low as 6,000 Kenya shillings, with her employers taking advantage of her underage status.
Sasa watoto wake walivunja glass tu ya maji kidogo. Akaniambia sijui mimi ndio nimevunja, atakata pesa yangu 3000, atanipea 3000. Mimi nikamwambia wewe leta kenye unaleta, uchukue kenye unachukua. Akanipatia 1000 ngapi? 3000. Akachukua 3000, mimi nikamwambia sawa.
Changing employers didn't help.
Shida ya huyu mama akulipi tena huyu. Kulipa pesa kutoa. ni shida. Ni kugombana kwanza, ndio mnagombana mpigane kwa jikoni ndio atoe pesa. Sasa kila siku ananipea pesa. Sasa kama sasa hii mwezi imeisha, ananipea kitu kama 2,000 kwanza, 5,000 anabaki nazo. Sasa nikasema, sasa pesa ikasanyika kwake, nikahesabu pesa yangu yenye ako nayo, ako na 50,000.
Faith Akello is 12 years old. She's also from Uganda and went through the same ordeal as Nakirus. After going through the hands of several exploitative employers, she ended up in Majengo slums, where she initially stayed with her 2 friends before getting married. She is now expectant.
Tukapata kwanza nyumba, tukakomboa nyumba yetu peke yetu, wasichana 3. Tukakaa kwa hiyo nyumba tukitafuta kazi, tukakosa kazi. Tulikuwa nalipa 2,000 hapa Majengo. 2,000, lakini stima 1,300 stima. 2,300 wote ukiweka pamoja. So tukakaa, wasichana, najua wasichana wengine ni mzuri, kuna roho mzuri, anaweka tu pamoja roho. Kuna mwingine anatoa pesa, kuna mwingine atoi pesa. Chakula ukisema watu watoe, wengine atoi, wengine anatoa. Mwingine anaenda kwa hoteli, mwenye anazoea kula kwa hoteli anaenda huko akule. So akuja hapa kwa nyumba kama mdomo amekauka. Anasema hajakula kitu. Nyinyi wengine mmepata pesa, mnakula pamoja, na tuko Nairobi. Si nyumbani mwali mwenye uko na shamba ende apate nini. Haya. Tena ukisema watu pesa nyumba, kila mtu anasema sijapata, hala ndio akakuja akatufukuza. So mimi nikapata boyfriend, sasa niko kwangu.
Elsewhere in the small town of Shimoni in Kwale County, you find caves that are believed to have been used as holding points for slaves before they were transported to slave markets before the 19th century.
Kwa historia hapo nyuma kidogo, tunaambiwa kwamba Shimoni ni nchi ya watumwa. Walikuwa watu wakichukuliwa, wakiuzwa, wakitua kwenye boti, wengine wanaingia kwenye hilo jishimo hapo, alafu boti inakuja wanachukua na wapele.
While that was in the past, modern day Shimoni continues to report cases of community members being trafficked into domestic servitude, especially to countries in the Gulf.
Utumwa wa sahihi na wa kitambo unatofautiana, kwa sababu utumwa wa leo tunaoita utumwa mamboleo ni utumwa ambayo you will not be forced, utajipeleka mwenyewe pale ambapo unatakikana. Lakini wakati umefika kule unatakikana, ndio sasa vile ambavyo utakuwa unatumika ndio utaona kwamba wewe unafanywa kama mtumwa. Good example, kuna hii hali ambayo inatokea kwamba kuna magent wanakuja, wana recruit mostly wasichana, wanasema kwamba kuna kazi imetokea katika bara la Arabu. Lakini wasichana wakifika kule, wakishafika sasa, ile historia wanavyoelezewa, the way they are treated, huwa unaona kama kwamba ni ile hali ya utumwa bado inaendelea kwa njia nyingine.
Kuna wasichana ambao walitaka kwenda na kunao ambao wanataka kwenda hata saa hii. Ni vigumu chief kujua kwa sababu yeye kuna wengine ambao wanataka kwenda saa hii. La hata uwaonye vipi kwa sababu ya hali ya kimaisha na zile tabu ambazo wanapitia. Unakuta anakuuliza utaweza kunilisha, utaweza kunishughulikia. So inakuwa vigumu, na kweli kama hatujaweza ama serikali yetu haijaweza kupeana kazi kwa vijana, then utamsaidia vipi? Unajua inastahili unapoambia mtu acha hiki, then unampa njia mbadala, unamwambia fanya hiki uweze kujisaidia. Kwa hivyo upande huo wako wale wanaenda na wanarudi kwa sababu ya kunyanyaswa, na kuna wengine still anataka kwenda, hata ukamuonesha picha ukamwambia kwamba kuna hawa wamenyanyaswa na wakafa, yeye hataki kujua. Yeye anasema naenda tafuta maisha, kwa hivyo naenda.
Kwale, being at the Kenya-Tanzania border, is a hotspot transit and destination point for trafficked persons. Wanjiru Ndungu, who has worked in Kwale for over 15 years as a social worker, says she has dealt with many cases of child sex trafficking.
During the year 2018, I remember recording some cases of trafficking. Those children were about 7 girls that were from up country, different areas, Bungoma, Busia, who are being offered opportunities of jobs, but they would come here, get abandoned, or be taken into a brothel or these cheap guest houses, and then they'll be lured into sex. Most cases where we have issues of child abuse, issues, say for instance, early marriage, whenever we intervened of a case of a child being married to an elderly person, especially in Lunga sub-county, many a times they would run into Tanzania.
Tanzanians, on the other hand, ran into Kenya through the Kwale porous border to look for employment while getting underpaid.
Cheap hotel workers will be gotten from Tanzania, especially for those small hotels along the highway. You can even enter, and like in Lunga, you'll be served by so many, especially some years back before people got to know about it. Most of the domestic workers in Mombasa, Likoni, Diani are from Tanzania. Quite a good number. They are young girls and even young boys from Tanzania.
Some Amoro tourists in Kwale have also been said to perpetuate sex trafficking in the county.
Of course, sex tourism is there, though it is not open. It is hidden. We can call it sex tourism, wale wanaokuja, lakini hata within, just because of ile poverty level tunasema, mtoto anakwenda ama anaruhusiwa kwenda, just for the sake alete nini? Alete chakula nyumbani, ama alete unga nyumbani, ambao tayari anakuwa mtumwa, because a 15-year-old and someone like you, or someone who is 45 years, atamwambia nini? Nothing. So atamtumia anavyotaka, na hata labda amwachilie na kuna kitu cha maana ambacho amefanyika. So yes, I cannot refute that ipo, though iko chini ya maji, na ukifuatilia it is being covered up at the family level. Naona ama kama ni this family is engaged, they come together, they discuss, wanasema tumewaoza. So tumeoza mtu na bado yuko, hata bado ndo anafikiria future yake, hata hajui mambo mengine. So it is there, though imefichika. And of course it's something that I've been thinking about it. That's because I'm still getting my footing. Ni kufikiria how do we engage and start creating that awareness na kuempower hawa watu.
During the research, ADS Kenya held forums with communities to educate them on forms of human trafficking and how to address them. In Moding, Busia County, the researchers met Emily Oshale, who shared how she thought an opportunity she got in 2014 to go to Lebanon as a domestic worker was a fortune, only to go back to Kenya a year and a half later without a single coin.
Lakini wakati niliingia katika nyumba, koloni ya huyu mtamu ikaanza kunuka wafu, mtu mmoja. Nikasema, walikuwa wameleta sasa maiti kutoka huko, hatukuje nitishe. Hapo sasa nikaanza kubomoa. Hiyo mizimu nikabomoa. Hizo mizimu nikabomoa. Wakakaa. Nikarudi kwetu salama. Nikaendelea bila kufika kutoka huko. Walianza kuniomba msamaha. Please, Emily, I know you want to go back to your children. Let us look the way that maybe God can open me to keep your ticket. By now, I'm poor, have no money. Sawa nikaomba. Nilipoombea akatoka. Alipotoka, asubuhi akanishuhudia amepata eligibility. Hiyo mstari aliweza kufanya ticket, akanunua kila kitu, akanishughulikia.
With her ticket bought, Emily thought she was now free to go back home to see her children, but there was one more hurdle.
Kwa sababu nilisign the contract nilikataa. Wakati nilikataa sasa ndio wakasema nilipe. Nililipa 100,000 na wao wananipea pesa. Mimi mwenyewe niliamua kulipa hiyo contract yangu. Sababu niliresign vile.
Ukisema nilipa narudi.
Sasa kwa hiyo kazi tu nafanya kazi. Nisilipwe. Mimi nilipita bure. Pesa wakakataa kunilipa ati kwa sababu nimefanya hapo maskini. Ticket tu ndio wanilipia na kusema we shall send your money through Western Union. Na mpaka leo wajatuma hiyo pesa kwa Western Union. Mimi niko tu na niko mzima na shukrani.
In Kericho, we met Janet, not her real name, who hails from Nyakach, Kisumu. At the time of this interview in 2019, she was only 21 years old with an 18-month daughter. She moved to Kericho in 2018 for commercial sex work, a trade she was recruited into and oriented by her close friend.
Nilikuja huku nikiwa na imani naenda kutengeneza pesa nirudi shule. Yeah. So in that 1 month nimesave. I have 30.
So this money that you are saving right now, it is for you and your brother?
And food. Cha tuniseme mama kwa vile sasa nitarudi shule. Nitajaribu mambo na stopoa bizna. Kwa hiyo ndio sasa tutakulia. Yeah. Mtoto wako hapo mimi kwa kupenda. Mtoto sasa hata mtoto sasa mimi ndo nampea.
In Isebania, Migori County, you will find another porous border between Kenya and Tanzania. James Omondi, the Kuria West Sub-County Children's Officer, says child trafficking in this area is normal.
Most of the cases that we have been handling as trafficking cases are those cases of children who work in warehouses along the border. Our education programs are not similar. You'll find that when they close schools in Tanzania, our schools are open. So what they do, when they close schools there, they come into Kenya. Some of them come, work, and go back. Yes. They are brought by adults, and that's why we are talking of trafficking. But when we receive such cases, we repatriate. We repatriate the children. We repatriate them to immigration. Immigration Kenya, immigration Tanzania, and up to their homes. People who live along Kenya-Tanzania border are all Koreans. They share the same language, they share the same culture, they intermarry, and they are related. Yes. So many cases, I suspect that many cases of child trafficking do not even, nearly 70% do not reach this office.
Poverty among the victims has been seen as the leading cause of modern-day human trafficking, but there are more causes such as cultural practices as noted during the research.
Girls being trafficked to Tanzania for purposes of FGM, female genital mutilation. Yeah. Yes. When the law is so tight on this side, they take them to Tanzania. Yes. And when the laws are tight on the other side, they bring their children here for FGM.
Combating modern-day human trafficking remains a key action call, requiring efforts from all stakeholders.
The most important thing that should be done to prevent child trafficking is sensitization on the Anti-Trafficking Act, so that they can be able to know that it is an offense. It is an offense to traffic a child. It is a law which has not been really enforced. It has not been given the strength it deserves to have when it comes to dealing with criminals. Yes. Yeah. The traffickers. Yes.
Sheria ambazo ziko zinafanya kazi vizuri tu, kwa sababu mimi nikiwa kama National Government Administrative Officer, ni jukumu langu kuhakikisha kwamba law and order inakuwa affected. So tukipata kitu chochote ambacho kinaenda kinyume na sheria, huwa tuna react immediately. So nashukuru pia kwa sababu kuna wale activists ambao tuko nao, tumeweka kama network yetu in the community. So tukipata tu kitu chochote tunakishughulikia kwa pamoja na kuhakikisha kwamba sheria inachukua mkondo wake.
There's need for awareness, because some of these people that are being trafficked are not even aware that they are. There is need for people to have those cues and pointers. Like, think about it. When the deal is too good, think again.
There's need for capacity In many, many cases, we noted that officers of the judiciary, officers of immigration services, and even officers of administration were not aware that there is a distinct definition of human trafficking. Many of them felt that we were trying to address issues of human smuggling, but they could not see, they were not aware of the law, the Counter Trafficking in Persons Act of 2010, and therefore there's a big gap and there's a lot of work to be done to be able to equip state officers at whatever level with the capacity that is required to be able to confront and protect victims of trafficking in the country.
The other gap is the area of surveillance, border surveillance. Because remember, most of this, some of these children, like in the case of Kenya, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, where most of the children who are trafficked, they come in, some as children under children labor, others come in to go and work in homes as house helps. So you find that there's, the gap that exists here is the enforcement. How do you enforce that, enforcement to ensure that the human trafficking focusing on children is addressed, at border points?
If government can be lobbied to put in place programs and policies that can support youth empowerment, for example, so that youth have gainful employment or they are able to pursue livelihoods that gives them dignity, it will not be easy for them to fall into the trap or the enticement of being trafficked or lured into jobs which are dead ends in the end, exploitative in every way. And the government can actually stop that if the environment within which the youth find themselves is more conducive for them to be empowered and to do work that will bring them dignity and livelihood that they can pursue.
Religious leaders and human rights organizations also have a big role to play in ending human trafficking in Kenya.
Si Biblia, si Qur'ani, si pasta wala si sheikh, wote wanakemea haya mambo, lakini tumezungumzia kwamba charity begins at home, kwa sababu hapa nyumbani kitoko utakuwa na ulegevu kidogo, hata uzungumzie Qur'ani, uzungumzie Biblia, uzungumzie nini, kwa sababu ile imani haijajengeka kwa huyo mtu. Sasa tatizo ni sisi kwamba lazima tujikaze, sisi ambao ni mashehe, mapasta, alafu kuna kifungu ambacho pia hutoa nguvu mashehe na mapasta, wajua vijana safari, kina mama, waampewa haki zao. Sasa hata mtoto ukimpiga pia una tahadhari. Waweza ukampiga pia uko hapa nikipiga akipata kidogo kifua kule naye, sasa haki za binadamu, haki za watoto zitakufuatilia.
Let us identify what can you do. Ni kwamba ni kazi hauna, na kama hauna apart from kuajiriwa, what else can you do with your hands? So if we can start focusing apart from preaching the word of God, that we preach the word of God, and also we start capacity building and empowering these people, because for the church to be rich, the congregants lazima pia wawe matajiri, because if kama washirika ni maskini, now you're not addressing the poverty ama how to change their lives, how the church transform.
Churches around the world have come together under the movement Freedom Sunday to sensitize the world about human trafficking. With her wide presence in the country, the Anglican Church continues to provide pastoral support to victims as well as raising awareness on the causes and effects of human trafficking.
Freedom Sunday is a day that is intended to pray and again create awareness. It's also intended to be one in which believers and community people can be called in to pray, to participate, get involved in even looking for different ways in which they can participate. That could be resourcing of any nature in these programs that have been put in place for creating awareness, as well as programs that are networking with the recovery systems that are put in place, or even institutions of rehabilitation that have been put in place in the society to rehabilitate those who have been rescued from the trafficking, because they get traumatized, they Some of them are terribly wounded, not only physically, but also spiritually and emotionally. So they require recovery processes, and those institutions may be there or not there in certain communities. And so when people are made aware, they have an opportunity to actually participate and also call on board persons that are informed professionally on counseling and offering therapy, to know that there are people within them and amongst them that require services, and see how they best can be helped. There is also need for meetings to be held with the community leaders to bring to them that statistical awareness, so that they can be consistently reminded that they have a role to play in breaking the chain of human trafficking. And it requires people that are informed to share the data that they have and utilize the avenues that are available for the church machinery and systems of operating to be enabled to break those chains and save the people of the land.
The church must be deliberate, intentional in terms of how best can they engage with communities, how best can they involve different partners, different players in bringing about concerted effort to address or to respond to the problem of human trafficking. And proof is simply where, for you to be able to respond in the most informed way possible, there must be gathering of data, there must be basic research, so that you are not actually just hitting in the dark. And sometimes doing that, you might actually cause more problems by responding to things that you did not fully actually understand than help it. So the church must gather the right kind of information to be able to respond appropriately and in a timely and effective way.
Where the church needs to participate more is in the area of prevention. And how do we prevent it? Particularly child trafficking and people who are coming from vulnerable situations, driven by poverty, to go into slavery willingly, but unknowingly what lies ahead of them with those heavy promises. And I think the church needed to engage more and more in creating awareness as a matter of prevention, reaching out to communities, mobilizing people to know the dangers of slavery and human trafficking, where people are taken to destination where they are going to be tortured and they are going to be misused and used in ways that they don't even consent to. The Bible also provides a good framework for what we can call a framework of standard of moral living, where the Bible talks of equity and no misuse of any human person. So we can use the Bible as a tool to create awareness that it is a vice that is not acceptable before God, and for us people of faith and people of the church, and allow people to know, to be aware that it is wrong either to hand over yourself to go and be misused or being oppressed. Another way of prevention is getting into communication with the destination countries, so that the church, which is ever present in many countries, we here in the third world, which are normally the source of slaves and modern day slaves, and the Western countries, which are the destination of that kind of slavery, and particularly now in Africa, we are looking at the Middle East as one of the areas that people are taking it as a destination. And I think if we can be able to get in touch with churches around there, who normally these people run to when they get an opportunity or raise their voices, so that the church can be a voice raiser as a way of prevention, so that we mobilize communities, but also we raise our voices and participate in going around to tell the story and use those survivors to be able to tell their story, so that people can be able to know the dangers of slavery.
As different voices put it, concerted efforts will therefore be required if modern-day human trafficking is going to be eradicated. From government to local leaders, human rights defenders to religious leaders, to every single potential victim. Everyone must come on board to stop human trafficking.